So a little bit of background, Professor Kingsbury asked me to put together this interview just briefly, as Erica is somebody that I could reach out to and she could share her experiences with us in the professional field of football specifically. So recently, Erica just took over as the policy advisor and strategic project coordinator for FIFPro. So congratulations on that, first of all. And I'll let you actually introduce yourself, so I'll shut up. And could you just start by introducing yourself and also give us a little bit of background on what that new role means for you?
Sure. So hi everyone, anyone who's listening and watching. Yes, I'm Erica, born in Brazil, raised in Italy. I've lived a bit all over the world in the past decade or so. Started working in sports a bit by chance. My first job ever was at the San Siro football stadium in Milan. And I've always had a passion for football. So I think following my curiosity and interest sort of led me to having this career in sports. Now I work, as Tom said, in policy and strategy at FIFPro, which is the worldwide organization that represents football players worldwide. I work mainly now in policy, which means that I draft policy papers that relate to representing players' rights. So from working conditions to human rights, defense against sexual abuse, harassment, and everything that is in between. It's a very new challenge for me, so I'm very new, but I'm very excited because it's a role that let me represents the voice of the players, the rights of the players in a world where, you know, players can have a very short and fragile career. So it's, for me, it's good to be in that position to represent the weaker tier of football, you know, not just the big elite players that we see on TV every weekend, but also the ones that are in lower leagues, smaller clubs that suffer the most. I think they need their voice to be represented the most. So I'm really glad to have this role and this opportunity.
Thank you very much. So for a little bit of added context, I met Erica when you were out here in Korea. We're both working here. I'm still in Korea, obviously. And you came out here and you ended up working at the Winter Olympics, if I'm correct. What, you know, not just restricted to football, obviously, but what made you choose a career in sport in the first place?
I don't think it was a conscious choice, to be perfectly honest. I've always loved football, so I've always been very passionate, very keen and active in following what was going on with the football around me. So when I first started looking for my first job, I naturally just looked up the stadium website to see if there was anything I could do. And even then, it wasn't really a conscious choice. I went on to study. I was studying foreign languages and cultural studies. But then in 2013, the World Cup in Brazil was coming up. And a lot of my friends back in Brazil, they kept telling me, oh, Erica, you should come. You know, I think you could do something here. But I had no idea what it meant for me to be involved in a FIFA World Cup. But I decided, again, following just my interest, my passion, and my curiosity for the industry, I just decided to go and give it a try, build my resume, and see if there was anything I could do. And that's how I entered the world of events and mega events. I understood what it meant to organize a World Cup while having to do so.
Mm-hmm. So you said it wasn't it was your friends who incentivized you to kind of get involved.
Yes.
And it wasn't necessarily, although being a sports fan, you hadn't really thought of it as an aspirant career. Were you aware,
No.
or were there any female role models in sport who were visible to you at the time when you were perhaps studying or when you were abroad?
Well, the two friends that saw my potential and saw that I could actually contribute to the organizing committee were both women. And they were the ones that called me and said, Eric, I think you should come and join the team. And they were definitely role models for me. They were just friends that I had met in previous years working in completely different industries. With one of them, we were working together at a hostel. But I think they in a sense were role models for me, because especially one of them, she was very determined to get into the FIFA World Cup organizing committee. And I remember when we first met, it was probably 4 years before. She said, I'm gonna be there, I'm gonna do it. And she she kept her promise, and then she brought me along. But in terms of sports role models, as a child, I don't know. I I thought Sporty Spice should count, first of all, because when you grow up in the 90s and you grow up with the Spice Girls, that makes a difference. So Sporty Spice will be my first sports role model.
Right. I'm not gonna. I'm
But
sure we
then,
could elaborate over hours on Spice Girls paraphernalia. But yeah,
but
sorry.
then
Go
if I
on.
can mention one person, there was one female football player in the 90s that was playing here in Milan or near Milan, and it was Milene Dominguez. I don't know if anyone is familiar. She was very famous for being the Guinness record for ball juggling. She had the record for the highest number of ball juggling, but she was very known in the Italian media for being Ronaldo's wife. And I remember watching her on TV very often because she was often invited as a pundit, but she was also always referred as Ronaldo's wife. And I kept asking myself, this girl is in the Guinness World Record and she plays for a football club nearby. So I just got curious, and I went to watch her game before I ever went to the biggest stadium in Milan to watch the men's clubs. I think in that sense, I didn't realize at that time, but in that sense, she made a difference for
Do you
me, I
think?
think.
Do you think? Do you think moments like those have shaped your experience professionally? I mean, even if it's indirect or
Yeah.
not aggressive discrimination, but do you think that has shaped you in your work as well?
I think I think at a subconscious level, I think when you see someone that looks like you in an environment, then it's subconsciously becomes available to you. If you don't ever see yourself represented in a certain place, in a certain room, in a certain field, it might not even come to your mind that you could actually be there. So I think seeing more females in the world of sports led me maybe subconsciously think, well, that is available to me. But then you do realize that those women were in very, very specific roles and were very limited. So I think once you get in, then you realize the limitation and the glass ceiling is still there. But I
Because
would say
obviously,
that it does make a difference.
because obviously you've worked in. I mean, you've worked in FIFA. You're FIFA master as well. You've worked in UEFA, and so some of the world's largest sporting institutions. What is the climate like currently for aspirant young women such as yourself in the sports sphere?
To be perfectly honest with you, when you enter organizations such as UEFA and FIFA, you do realize there are a lot of women around. There's a lot of women in admin positions. But the higher you go in the hierarchy, the more and more you realize it's white men, and still at the very top, older white male. So it makes you, I think it makes it even more evident that, okay, we are here. It means that we care about the job, we know the job, we know how we do it. We're in every type of field within at least football administration. How come when you reach a certain level higher up, it's hard for us to get there? I think that's when you really realize there is still a glass ceiling. But we are in sports, we are in football. There's many women. There's many women.
Do you is there a standout moment for you or a breakthrough moment when you thought that there was real progress being made, or some time where you felt empowered, or a moment you could celebrate professionally?
I do think that the year building up to the France Women's World Cup, 2019, that we did see a big wave of not just more women and more female football players raising their voices and wanting to be seen and represented more in even mainstream football. I do think that led to more organizations waking up and there was maybe a glimpse of recognition that you do need a more diverse football industry, not just because that's the fair thing to do, but also because it would increase the value of the game, and the general output would be much better when you have a diverse environment, and that goes, beyond just gender. I think there was a bit of a glimpse of recognition. I did see changes coming from there. I don't know if it's because of the general cultural climate. It was, around the same time that the Me Too movement became stronger here in Europe as well. So I think generally the society and the culture sort of drove football rather than the other way around. It would be nice to see football as a more progressive force that is able to lead the way in that sense.
So within your role, I know that you gave us a little brief introduction to what that entails. So what if there was a no holds barred, no ceiling, sky's the limit? What would the future hold for you in that? Would that be a role that you would look to be in for the foreseeable future, or is there? Do you have aspirations for a certain position within sport?
I don't think I have aspiration for a certain position, but there is more of an interest in a specific field for me in sports and football. I think the reason I like football is because I believe it connects people and it brings everyone together, regardless of culture, language. So for me, it's that part of the sport that interests me the most. And I want to work in that type of environment. And if I'm able to be a voice and a bit of a force in using football to enhance our societies, to make the world a little bit better, to unite more people, then that's where I want to work. I think that's where I aspire to be. Then the role can vary, the organization can vary. There's many positions that you could have. There's many organizations, small or big, but that's where I want to be in the world, leveraging football for some positive impact in the world. I think we need it.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, especially now. So a lot of I hope that a lot of the people listening to you now, I know the majority of them are aspirant young women themselves who are on that journey, who are choosing to do this master's or this course, particularly to inform themselves better or to share their views on women in sport. What would be something that you want to share with them as somebody who is a few years of experience down the road with them?
Well, I think, first of all, I've heard this quote recently. I was watching a UEFA documentary that I recommend 100% everyone to watch. It's called Outraged. It's about discrimination. And there was a quote that I found very relevant, especially for women. And it said, when you are, wait, I wrote it down here. Oh yeah. When you are in a room that wasn't designed for you, just being yourself is a revolution. I think that summarizes the role of women in sports perfectly, because it's for sure that room wasn't designed for us, but we are here and we should be in more rooms. We should be more present in decision-making tables. And I think for us just to be there without feeling that pressure to behave like the man around us, I think just being yourself, it's what we should be focusing on doing. Because I've noticed even with me when I started my career, and maybe I was one of the few women in a big meeting room for big decisions, that I would start acting differently, that I would start, not smiling, or I would act all serious, and I would try to adjust to the old white male, I don't know, stereotype. And I would try to not be myself, to be more credible, to feel more listened to. But I think that's the wrong approach. I think as women, we shouldn't try to be or to behave like the man around us when we are in a football environment, in a sports environment where we are maybe a minority. You should just be yourself, because I think we also bring a very unique perspective. to the workplace. And that's what we should be focusing on. Does that answer the question?
So much better than I could have hoped. Thank you so much. I would love if we could speak for an hour on this, because I know there's so much I want to explore with you. But I want to thank you so much for taking the time, Erica, to speak to myself and to speak to everyone and share your experience. And if anybody wants to get in touch with you or ask you any questions or follow-ups, how can they best reach you?
Oh, yes. Well, social media, maybe LinkedIn. You can reach me on LinkedIn, Erica Puppo. I'm sure Tom can give you my contact details. You feel free to share my email address with the class. If anyone wants to reach out, I'm always happy to connect with like-minded people and just have discussions on the world of sports and football.
Thank you so much, Erica. Thank you for your time, really.